closed down or deactivated under the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty that was signed between, let's see, let's go for a question here, Medicine Valley. Tell me a little bit about why the bases were drawn down. Do you know anything about that?
Speak up.
Was it a treaty between Russia and the United States to increase our capacity for war?
That's somewhat correct. Yeah, what happened was, in 1991, the first President Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, signs a treaty with Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union still hadn't broken up yet, and it was called Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. And basically, what it did is it cut the Minuteman missile fields, or the Minuteman force, in half on our side, and did the same thing on the Soviet side as well. The ones that are in black are bases that were deactivated. So we had Grand Forks, North Dakota, that was deactivated, Rapid City, South Dakota, Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, and Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, that was deactivated. The ones that are still active are Minot, North Dakota, Great Falls, Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, and Cheyenne, Wyoming, F.E. Warren Air Force Base. And those now have Minuteman III. And there's approximately 450 to 500 that are still out there. The Soviets, well, what's now Russia, they maintain the same force as well. So let's go around the capsule here about those two officers that worked here. The first one was the commander. He sat over there in a chair, these red chairs. They had seatbelts on them. I'll show you them on there in a minute. You see the old telephone. Those buttons there, or that panel, had a status of all their missiles. Each launch control center controlled 10 Minuteman II missiles with 1.2 megaton warheads. Now, time for another question. I guess I don't need an answer for this, but I want you to think here a minute. How many of you all, or I'll tell you what, let's go to Chilhowie. How many of you have seen the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick?
I have.
Just one.
One. Brian Adkins.
Okay, just one. Okay. Well, that scene's that's not really very accurate. Where at the very beginning, one officer is aiming his pistol at another, and he says, "Turn your key, sir. Turn your key." Well, first of all, in here, both officers had to agree for there to be a launch, and I'll go into that. But there was not a button. Some people think there was a button, like a panic button or something like that. There was not. Your commander and your deputy commander each had a key that they had to turn. The commander's is right there on the left side. And I'll move this over just a little bit. And both officers would have to insert their keys and then turn them together at the same time. Let me go here just for a minute. Both the keys were 12 feet apart. And the reason that was, so there wouldn't be just one person making a decision that we're going to launch these weapons. So you had a commander and you had a deputy commander, and they had to turn their keys simultaneously on the commander's countdown. All right. Let's go to the deputy commander's position. And please disregard the props here. I'll talk a little bit about the missiles here in just a minute. But this is where the deputy commander sat. And your deputy commander was a junior Air Force officer, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, 23, 24 years old, 25 years old, right out of college. An awesome responsibility to have. Even the commander, maybe no older than 32 years old, and an Air Force captain. So a lot of responsibility. This is the safe up here. In the safe here, there were two keys with lanyards. That meant something around, and if they went into launch mode, they would place the keys around their necks there was also a code book in here. Each missile launch control officer, commander, deputy commander, what have you, they all had their own padlock. And if I would know the combination for mine only, I wouldn't know anybody else's combination, and nobody else would have mine. And that was just another safeguard to prevent one person from, getting in there and both officers not concurring. Okay. Let's go around. Let's start a little bit here with, let's go around the room. So, Chill Howie, since we're on you guys right now, do you have any questions so far about this?
Anybody? Any questions? No, not at the present.
Okay. Let's go over to Medicine Valley.
No questions here.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question. The officers that came down here, the two officers that came here, the commander and deputy commander, what was their tour of duty? How long did they work when they came down here?
3 days. No, it was for
3 days.
It was a 24.
It was 24-hour shift.
Yeah.
3 days.
There's 3 days.
3 days. 3 days and then 3 days off.
The missile launch control officers, when they came down here, they came down here for 24 hours at a time. And the reason they had now you're partially right. I heard somebody say 3 days. The support personnel up on top in the support building, that was your 6 Air Force security policemen, your cook, and your facility manager. They were all enlisted. Yeah, they did come out here for 3 days at a time. But your missile launch control officers, your missileers, actually came down here for 24. And they could sleep here. You can't see it. It's kind of off to the side a little bit. Let me see if we can. Well, I'm going to tilt this a little bit. There's a curtain back there, and there's a bunk. And they were allowed to sleep. They would take cat naps, 1, 2, 3 hours. This was a hub of activity. They would be drilled all the time, practice and power outage procedures, communication outage procedures, and also launch procedures. So there was always something going on, but they could take turns sleeping. All right. Now let's go. Okay. Did I ask Strasburg yet a question? All right, Strasburg. You guys get your turn now. Give me a question here.
Like, you said that they had like 10 missiles to command. Were they all in the same area, or were they over like a certain mile radius?
That's a great question. Each launch control center, like I said, they were in charge of 10 missiles. Those missiles would have been no closer. They were at least 3 miles apart from each other. And that was the thought was that would give them some protection. Later on, after the Cold War ended, we've now found out there's verifications. Each side, now the Russian side and the United States, were allowed to keep one launch control center, one launch facility, and that was for historic purposes. And we've now found, and each side, we send a team of officers over there every 18 months. The Russians send a team of officers over here every 18 months to verify that the launch facility and launch control center are no longer being used. But what we found out from that was a Russian officer told us that there was a 10 megaton warhead targeted on Launch Control Center Delta 01. So we're talking about 10 million tons of TNT and explosive power. That's 4 times more explosive power than all the bombs and munitions that were used in World War II. Very large. There would be no survivability. So let me go. Speaking of that, let's talk a little